Well, the Brewers did a lot of charity work at the trade deadline. They did a lot of nice things for other teams in the league. Chief among them, taking bad pitchers off of other teams' hands. Who needs Zach Greinke? Who needs Trevor Bauer? Who needs Madison Bumgarner? David Stearns got us Jordan Lyles with his high five ERA. They did pitch okay last night. We'll get back to that in a second. We got Drew Pomeranz with his high five ERA. Never mind the fact that you currently have 3 healthy starting pitchers, and when you are healthy, you have 1 really good starter, 2 bad starters, and 2 average starters, that being Davies and Anderson. And those last 2 guys are who you would need to be 4 and 5 in your rotation to make the playoffs. Especially when you consider that the Brewer offense isn't good enough to carry the team on their back, and the bullpen, which at times can be good, is really hit or miss. You never know what you're going to get out of them, at least the bullpen, until the night's over. Jeffries come in last night. I got nervous. I thought I was going to go to bed. And I thought, okay, well, Jeffries and Hader are coming in. And as good as Hader is, I don't know what's going to happen until it's over. Because the bullpen isn't what it was last year. Nothing even close to that. So essentially what we have seen out of the Brewers up to this point in the season, horrible starting pitching, a little bit of an inconsistent offense, and a hit or miss bullpen. What we've seen is what we're going to get for the rest of the season because the Brewers really did not change. And David Stearns come out, he said, yeah, we're going to get, a bigger name, but with all these injuries, we wanted more depth instead. Well, obviously you need arms, but if you're not going to add quality arms, you didn't get any better. I don't know, folks, it's a very disappointing trade deadline. I mean, the Brewers didn't really buy, and they didn't really sell either. They just added pieces that they would have needed to get anyway because they have injuries and they're lacking bodies at the moment. Welcome to the program, Aaron Michael Show. You can email us, aaronmichaelshow@gmail.com, and on Twitter, Aaron M. Show. So, Moustakas and Grandal both still in the roster. It was something that we talked about yesterday. One way or the other, though, the Brewers didn't improve. I mean, what I just said a moment ago, the Brewers really didn't buy or sell. In essence, what they did was this. They treated the deadline like a normal average day in the majors. They needed a body to pitch, or bodies to pitch, because they're decimated with injuries. They got that with Lyles. You had another insignificant piece in the bullpen, or maybe as a starter with Pomeranz. But they didn't get any better, and they didn't get any worse. They didn't buy or sell. I'll tell you what this is. This is the Brewer organization attempting to keep the fans happy by not selling. They didn't give up on the season. By not selling, they did not give up on the season. On the cusp of the Packers starting, they didn't sell. They didn't move their big major league pieces like Moose or Grandal for prospects. And they didn't sell off anything huge from the minors. Dubon, trade him, but they didn't sell. That's an attempt to keep butts in the seats at Miller Park. But at the same time, they didn't buy either. They made moves that needed to be made, almost just out of necessity for sheer numbers, having bodies to throw out there. So it can be said that they made moves, but they did not buy. They didn't get better. David Stearns can now come out and say that, well, we believe in the guys that we have on this roster. I'm waiting for that. Unless he did already and I missed it. But I'm waiting for him to come out. We believe in the guys that we have in-house. And that's simply not going to be true. Because they didn't buy. If they bought, then they obviously believed in a majority of guys that they have, but they didn't buy. They didn't go all in and try to make the playoffs. Sure as hell not try to win the World Series. So if you hear Stern say that they believe in the players that they have, let me translate that for you. That means we didn't want to sell and have Miller Park empty out. We didn't want to give people a reason to stop coming, but we also didn't think that we were good enough to get to the next level with one or two more moves. So when you hear him say that he believes in the core group of players that we have, if he comes out and says that, that's BS. That's not true. They obviously don't believe in the group of players that they have, or they would have done something to add to it. They want you to keep supporting. They want you to keep coming to games. And that'll be done under the guise of we believe in the players that we have, and you should too. But what it'll end up being is the same as we've already seen this season. Nothing is going to change. The starting pitching isn't going to suddenly have an awakening and compete with the Dodgers. The offense will be what it's been. They'll have some good games. They'll have some bad games. And the bullpen is just going to remain a crapshoot. Pomeranz. Okay, fine. They got Pomeranz. Going to add him to the bullpen. See what I'm saying? And I know they needed bodies. I don't have a problem with the fact that the Brewers went out and they picked up extra pieces and extra players and added depth because they needed to do that anyway. But I'm talking about the quality of the players that they brought in is what is not good enough. And what it's going to do is it's going to keep everything the same. Listen, and I know that Lyles pitched well last night, but his numbers are basically the same as Chacin. So Chacin is out, and in the meantime, while he's out, you replace him with Lyles, who has about the same record and just about the same ERA. You're just exchanging one bad for another bad. Maybe they need another arm in the bullpen, so they go get Pomeranz. He's 2-9 this season with a 5.58 ERA. And this from the San Francisco Chronicle. Pomeranz struggled so much in the Giants' rotation that he was moved to the bullpen, where he made himself valuable almost overnight with 4 overpowering appearances. Listen, though, the Brewers have enough of those guys. How many people can you have on a team who are supposed to be starters but don't pan out and have to move to the bullpen, and they just went and picked another one out? But what I'm saying is they're not getting better. They didn't get any better. They added some pieces, some arms, some bodies that they needed to have, but they didn't get better. So what you've seen from the Brewers at this point is, to this point, that's what we're going to see now. That's what we're going to see in 2 weeks from now. That's what we're going to see come the end of the season. Because they didn't get any better. And therein lies the problem. But at the same time, they didn't buy, they didn't sell. But let me say it again to you. The Brewers didn't want to sell after a season like last year, where you're one game away from the World Series, and then having high expectations coming into this season. They didn't want to just give up and sell. But they also didn't think highly enough of the team that they have to buy. But I'm sure they'll come out and try to sell to the fan base that they really believe in the guys that they have in-house. And they don't think that they're that far away. And they didn't feel like they needed to make any big blockbuster moves for any big names. Well, we've already went through a majority of the season with the guys that are in place. And it doesn't have you in first place. It doesn't have you in the wild card. And it doesn't have you looking real good on a night-in, night-out basis. This is the exact same team, with the addition of a couple of guys with an ERA well over 5. But at the end of the day, the Brewers can say that they went and they are trying to win. End of the day, they can say they're trying to win. And at the end of the day, they can say that money is not an issue, and they can say that they are seriously trying to contend. But none of that's true. Look where they're at. Look at how they did nothing at the deadline to improve, to actually get better, and look at where they'll be at the end of the season. People need to stop letting the Brewers take advantage of their blind loyalty, and that is something that the Brewers do. It's something that a lot of Brewer fans, not all, probably not a lot of the listeners to this program, but it's something that some Brewer fans allow the Brewers to do, is to take advantage of their loyalty. We'll be right back, right here on the Aaron Michaels Show. Welcome back to the program, the Aaron Michaels Show. Alternative Wisconsin sports media, not biased, not afraid. I'll never talk down to frustrated Wisconsin sports fans, nor will we suck up to the teams in the state. Well, despite not making moves yesterday to get better, at least not big names that most people were hoping for, the Brewers look like they're going to bring up Trent Grisham from AAA. He's going to make a first start today. 34 games in AAA. He's batting .381. 381, 13 home runs, and that's just in San Antonio. But he's been hitting well all year. AA as well. So this move to bring Grisham up today to get his first start, this move works on a number of levels for the Brewers. First, it throws a bone to the fans who are frustrated by the lack of significant moves for the team at the trade deadline. Again, something that's going to keep butts in the seats at Miller Park at the start of Packers season. But also, assuming that he can continue to hit at the major league level, it makes the Brewer offense another guy deeper, which is good. Still, the problem, I think, is that it's still not going to make the offense good enough or consistent enough to be able to carry the team. Which, if they're not going to go get the starting pitching, and they're not going to add significant, important arms to the bullpen, if they're not going to do that, the offense is obviously going to be the strength, and it's got to be good enough to carry the team. And even if he keeps hitting at the major league level, I don't think that the offense is still going to be good enough to carry it to the playoffs. And once you hit the playoffs, you can forget it, because offense isn't going to be able to carry you through to the World Series and to win the World Series. You need pitching of some kind, whether it be starters or bullpen, probably both. The real downfall for the Brewers so far, and what will end up being their downfall in the end, is going to be their starting pitching, which was the problem last year. It was the major issue of why they didn't go to the World Series. A great starting pitcher who could just go out and shut down the opponent was something that they were missing last year in the NLDS. If you want to get to a World Series, you're going to need at least one guy who you know for sure is going to win when you throw him out there. In a must-win game, a Game 7, or what have you. The kind of pitcher that I'm talking about was something that they were missing last year. It's something that they did not address in the offseason. They went into this season hoping that Peralta, Burns, and Woodruff were going to work out, but it was just hope, and obviously it hasn't panned out, except for Woodruff. So the lack of starting pitching was an issue. It did not get addressed in the offseason. It did not get addressed at the trade deadline. So you can bring up Grisham, add him to your offense, and that's great. Hopefully he hits well. It'll be exciting to see him up there. But it doesn't address the actual need that you had, and that was starting pitching. And the bullpen can't be counted on. And it can't be leaned on like it was last year. Now, here's a thing that we got into a little bit on Twitter yesterday afternoon. Mark Attanasio has owned the Brewers since 2004. That's been 15 years. Okay, my question is, when is he going to go all in for a World Series? And when I say all in, I mean all in. Meaning you pull out all the stops. You hold nothing back. You hold no one back. You pay what needs to be paid. You're willing to trade what needs to be traded. You're willing to take on the contracts that need to be taken on. When are you going to go all in to win a World Series? They were one game away from the series last season. So they obviously were not that far away. And money is not an issue, at least that's what the Brewers say. Okay, so you're a pitcher short of the World Series last year. Where was Dallas Keuchel? Where is Craig Kimbrell? Where are they at? Where's the starting pitching you desperately needed? Where's the reinforcements in the bullpen? Where's the extra offense? They got a little bit of extra offense, and you get people, yeah, they've tried. They've tried. Trading for CC Sabathia. Let me tell you something. Trading for CC was a move to make the playoffs. Big deal. Who cares? Sure, it was a fun run, but that wasn't a move to win the World Series. That was a sad Brewer team, and I know that really hurts Brewer fans' feelings to hear that. But that team in 2008, that was a sad Brewer team. You had Ned Yost get fired a week before they made the playoffs. And it wasn't a very good team. Good teams don't have their manager fired a week before the season ends when they're in the middle of a playoff race. And the only reason that they were in that race and made the playoffs at all was because Sabathia did his best Aaron Rodgers impression and carried the entire organization on his back. You got getting Markham and Greinke. That was a nice move. It got you a division, but it wasn't enough to go to a World Series or to win a World Series. And there are Brewer fans who will defend that, and where they are a willing accomplice, along with the media in this state, who will defend the Brewers and defend Attanasio for the moves he's tried to make. Well, he tried and it just didn't pan out. Yeah, it didn't pan out because he didn't do enough. You didn't do enough in 2008 to win a World Series. You didn't do enough in 2011 to win a World Series. You can't even argue that fact. It's not possible for you to argue with me on this. They did not win a World Series, right? And if they did not win a World Series, they didn't do enough. Sure, they tried. They tried to get better, and they did get better. But I don't think that some Brewer fans fully comprehend what it takes to win a World Series. Which makes sense, so that they've never won one. I guess, how would you know? Especially if you don't pay attention to other teams. But you look at how good listen to this for a minute. You look at how good the Brewers were last year, and they were good. But you look at how good they were last season. Remember that? They were good. But to win a World Series, you have to be even better than that. Shocking, huh? But they were good last year, but not good enough to win a World Series. They weren't even good enough to make it to the World Series. Almost. But almost doesn't count. Almost isn't enough. Almost and just trying isn't good enough. Then you got to try harder. Then you got to do more. You can't, you can talk about the team that they had last year, or going and getting CC, or getting Greinke and Markham, but none of that was enough to win a World Series. To win a World Championships, you have to go above and beyond anything that the Brewers have done to this point. And you can say he's tried. Go ahead. But he's tried and failed. And he hasn't tried hard enough. Attanasio is a billionaire. You can't break the bank, go all in for a World Series for a couple of years, especially if you say that money is not an issue. If it wasn't going to happen after last season, when you're one game away, when are you going to do it? Obviously, you were close, but you still needed a few pieces. You definitely needed at least one more piece to get past the Dodgers just to win the National League, and then you also needed extra pieces beyond that if you wanted to go beat the Red Sox. But nothing. They re-signed Moose. They went out and got Grandal. That didn't fix pitching. And here we sit, a game out of first place, half game out of the wild card. On August 1st, this deep into the season, it hasn't worked. Okay, Attanasio, it hasn't worked. David Stearns, it hasn't worked. You can say they tried. Okay, fine. They tried. Congratulations. You don't get a trophy for that. You get a trophy for winning the World Series. And for Brewer fans who are not fully comprehending what it takes to get to a World Series, you say, well, what does going way over the top and trying to win look like? It looks like the Houston Astros. It's having probably the best pitching staff in baseball to begin with. And then on top of that, adding Zach Greinke. Going way over the top, not just to be good, but to be great. To be a World Series contender. The Astros, that's what it looks like. And the Brewers have never done that or done anything close to that under Attanasio. You know, it is a lot like the Packers under Ted Thompson. Do some things to keep you in the mix or division and a playoff berth, but don't go the extra mile to win the Super Bowl or the World Series. Never go that extra mile. Please don't make a guy like Christian Yelich the next Aaron Rodgers. Don't waste the talent like the best player in the league by doing just enough to be in the mix and make the playoffs most years. Who cares about the playoffs? Come on, Brewer fans. The Brewers have been in the Milwaukee since 1970. You have 0 World Series championships. You've been there one time. That was all the way back in '82. Quit being satisfied with an occasional playoff berth or the rare division championship. The name of the game is World Series, and the Brewers have none, and that needs to change. And a lot of people spend $15 or $20 on the weekends to pay for parking at Miller Park to go in and spend $8 for beer, $4 for a hot dog, plus between $8 and $100 for a single ticket. The least you could ask for is one World Series since 1970. I mean, really. Just think about that. Think about it while we take a break. We'll be back. This is the Aaron Michael Show. Hello, welcome back. Aaron Michael Show. This is an interesting tidbit from Packer camp yesterday. Josh Jones was removed from practice by Matt LaFleur. Trey Carson, one of the running backs down low on the depth chart, made some contact with a defensive player, which Jones evidently didn't like, so he went and tackled him, prompting LaFleur, as he said in his own words, as LaFleur said, "I told him, get out," at that particular moment. So that created the first little fight of training camp. Always good to see that. Not as exciting as the Reds and the Pirates, though. That was fun to watch. I don't know why everyone has to get so bent out of shape about fights in sports. Oh, goodness, it's not good. The kids are watching. Yeah, nothing worse than teaching your kids to stick up for themselves, right? But I do understand what LaFleur is talking about, why he kicked Jones out of practice. LaFleur has a zero-tolerance policy on tackling and things of that nature during practice, trying to save guys for injuries and whatnot. And like he said, when you're expecting a tackle, you can brace for it, but in this case, when you're not expecting it, it can lead to injuries, so that's fine, I get it. I appreciate the fact that LaFleur has his rules and zero-tolerance policies, and that he was willing to kick him out of practice. Go with what you believe, stick to it. I can appreciate that. I like it. A story that I've been seeing it pop up a couple of times with LaFleur and the Packers, it's that LaFleur has really continued to harp on the team's urgency. And at times, he's not been happy with it. Actually, it seems like more than a handful of times. Yeah, this is a fascinating study with a new coach. You get a guy, first year as the head coach of a team. He has to come in and he has to change the culture that has been on a team for years under McCarthy. And he has to change it into what he wants it to be. He's got a different standard, and he's got differences in what he wants to see from his players, what type of team he wants to have, how he wants his players to behave. You come into a place where the former coach was there for 13 years, and there is a certain culture, a culture that most of the people on that team are used to, something that's been drilled into them as the norm for a really long time, for some players on this team for their entire career. And in walks a new coach, and he's got the task of changing that to what he wants it to be. But what's interesting to see is that it seems that these players have been in a culture where there's no sense of urgency. Because quite often LaFleur has had to talk about the team needing more urgency. Players are going to come in and they're going to do what they know. And they're going to come in, they're going to do what they do. And evidently, that does not involve a high sense of urgency or hustling from drill to drill or being mentally sharp. Those are things that I think seemed to be lacking for a number of years under McCarthy, and they definitely showed up on the field. And that's something that LaFleur is battling right now. Coming in trying to change this team into a culture that he wants, into something that is suitable for him. It's interesting to watch because you can tell what the culture was like under the previous coach by seeing what LaFleur is dealing with right now. And when a guy is there for as long as McCarthy, like I said, that just gets drilled into you, and it goes deep into who you are, and it's kind of painful for LaFleur to have to kind of come in there and try to change something that for a lot of these guys it's all that they know. But that's one of the challenges of being a first year coach in any situation. Aaron Rodgers ranked number 8 in the top 100 on NFL Network as voted by the players. In front of them, well, here's the top 7 in front of Rodgers. Aaron Donald number 1, Drew Brees number 2. I thought that was kind of high. But we go on. 3rd is Khalil Mack. Patrick Mahomes coming in at 4th. Todd Gurley 5. Tom Brady 6. Antonio Brown 7. I guess I can't really argue with that. Doesn't matter anyway, but it is interesting because it's something voted on by the players. Aaron Rodgers was number 10 last year. And he moved up 2 spots. Referencing his touchdown to interception ratio was a big reason, evidently, that he was voted into that spot. But part of it, though, part of the whole, I mean, he threw 2 interceptions last year. All right. Well, and that's fine. This is something that's been talked about plenty with Rodgers, and I won't get that deep into it here, but just a quick mention. Well, it's true he only threw 2 interceptions and he doesn't throw many. He's not really taking any chances either. And while he did have 2 interceptions, which is impressive, he also threw the ball away last year at an alarming rate, way more than any other quarterback in the league, actually, and wasn't even close. Something to think about as we move on. Let's see here, other Packers stuff. What else do we got? According to ESPN, the Packer wide receiver group is ranked 18th in the NFL. Give that some time. I think their offense will pick it up this season. I mean, it's probably going to take some time, but LaFleur, new offense, revitalized Aaron Rodgers. The Packers will be okay. I think their offense is going to be at a very high level by the end of the season. Get some structure in there. A whole bunch of fun stuff. Speaking of structure, from Texans Wire and USA Today, Deshaun Watson hopes to pick up Aaron Rodgers. Hopes to pick Aaron Rodgers' brain during Texans-Packers joint practices. Those 2 teams are going to practice together twice next week before their preseason game. Watson said that he learned how to keep plays alive, extend plays, try to make defenses cover for 6 seconds or more. He learned that from Aaron Rodgers, which is something that I hope LaFleur can really cut out of Rodgers' game as much as possible this season. The running around like a crazy person, chaos, it's really getting old to me. I want to see structure. I want to see 1, 2, 3, throw. Not a fan of watching Rodgers run around from one end of the pocket to the other like a squirrel that's trying to go across the road. Back and forth, holding on to the ball forever, passing up open short receivers in the process, just for a chance to go deep. And then recent years, more times than not, throw an inaccurate pass. I just want to see. I want to see short, quick passes down the field, nickel and dime the defense to death. I'm good with that. Do what Tom Brady does. Do what Drew Brees does. I mean, God, in all honesty, folks, if you're worried about numbers or you're worried about stats, look at Drew Brees' stats. Who cares about throwing the ball deep down the field? 2 bad throws down the field and 2 incompletions. Well, if you would have nickeled and dimed for 6 plays, you would have had the same amount of yards. And they're higher percentage. They help your team win. Just a thought. If you want to get a hold of the program, you can do that. Email address is aaronmichaelshow@gmail.com. Also, on Twitter, follow along there, and if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns, whatever the case may be, you can go to Twitter, and that is at Aaron M. Show. At Aaron M. Show on Twitter. And thank you for joining us today on the Aaron Michaels Show. So the Brewers today, be interesting afternoon game this afternoon, and bringing up a prospect, and it's going to do something to make the Brewer fans a little bit happy anyway. Trent Grisham coming up from AAA, batting .381, 13 home runs. So something, a little bit of a bone to be able to throw the Packer fans, or the Brewer fans, sorry. So that will be exciting today. We'll be back tomorrow. The Aaron Michaels Show.